If you start something today and you keep doing it and it is broadcast to the world and you can express your opinion through it and you just keep doing it and you keep trying to make it better and you keep trying to get it into more people's hands, it's crazy what can result from that. Things that seem completely disconnected from it can result from that. And that's why we've always kind of harped on recurring content, having a home base of something you do on a regular, whether it's weekly or monthly basis, and just letting the compounding interest of doing that for years just stack up.
You are now listening to the Creative Juice podcast brought to you by IndiePRO.io.
What's up, Indies? Welcome back to Creative Juice. I'm your host, Circa, and with me as always, my co-host, Jack McCarthy. How's it going today, Jack?
Yes, doing great. Happy to be here. Excited for this episode, dude.
Yeah! It is the 300th episode of Creative Juice, which is fucking nuts.
300 episodes, man.
Yeah, I remember the first episode I ever recorded. I was out in back of my little attic apartment in downtown Orlando, and I had my cell phone with a little like lavalier. I was interviewing our guest on the phone, and now here we are. It's crazy to think how far we've come. So wild.
Yeah, man, it's amazing. I remember first listening to Creative Juice either before you and I met or shortly thereafter. I remember I listened to the first batch of Creative Juice episodes when I would mow my parents' lawn.
Wow.
I would mow the lawn, and it was a break from work, and I would listen to the podcast, and that was probably the time where I was thinking, like, this guy knows what's up. And look at us now, man.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Well, this episode, we're here to celebrate 300 episodes. We're also here to look back at 300 episodes, 6+ years of history working in music marketing, and just kind of go over the lessons that really stick out, the things that we've learned, things that have sort of changed our perspective a bit, and hopefully pass those on to you guys so that you can carry them with you as sort of rules of thumb, or at least things to sort of meter your expectations or expose you to concepts or beliefs that might be less limiting than whatever you got rolling around in your head right now.
For sure. I think this is going to be a really fun episode. It's always nice to reflect on stories and things that we've learned. And that's kind of what I'm most excited about today, is just to share some memories and, maybe some things that were pivotal over the life of IndiePRO, over the life of this podcast, and some things that have stuck with us as music marketers and business people that have informed the things that we teach and that we talk about and that we do with our clients. And I'm really, really excited about it. This feels like almost like a little homecoming,
For sure. Yeah. The first thing I want to just come right out and say is that, as I said at the beginning, I started this on a cell phone with a little lavalier mic into a call recorder app. I had some helpful, tips from people who had started successful podcasts before to kind of guide me in starting it. But I didn't have equipment. We didn't even, the podcast wasn't even video at that point. And I just kept doing it. I think we missed maybe 2 or 3 episodes across 300 episodes in terms of weekly uploads, but not a whole lot. And it's crazy the impact that the podcast has had. I was just talking to Drex Carter, a friend of mine, the other day. He just went on tour with the rapper Token in Europe. And his tour manager for that tour was a gentleman we've worked with for TikTok content named Finn. And he told me that Finn was telling him about how, like, him and all his friends who now have this company advising, like, they all learned from IndiePRO about the music industry, like, and marketing specifically. And it's just crazy to think about who's out there listening. We've met people in the music industry who learned about us through the podcasts, like big people in the music industry. It's just been such a beacon of influence for us. It allows us to get out there to tons of people. But if you look at the per episode downloads, like, we've had peaks and valleys, nothing crazy. It's not like the Joe Rogan Experience or any shit like that, but it is a small world out there. And so I think the takeaway lesson there is that if you can and clone yourself if you have something to say and you can start recording it in a way that's digestible for other people, and you can just put it out, and then you can continue doing that and just get, consistency. Quantity has a quality all on its own. That's a Dan Carlin quote from Hardcore History. But it applies. It's like, if you have a way to get there to the world, and you just stay consistent, like, even if you don't get 1 million downloads per episode or 1 million views per video or whatever, you can still have an outsized impact for what you would expect.
Yeah, it's true. And the podcast has been such an interesting vehicle for that because, like you said, so many people that have come into our world as a business, both from indies in our community to our clients at the agency and in the Indie Founder Program, to their team members, their managers, just generally people that we like, friends that just want to keep up with what we're doing. One of my best friends, Bruce, who's been on the podcast, he's mentioned to me on numerous occasions that artists and writers that he works with will often mention, like, oh yeah, I was listening to this episode of this podcast, Creative Juice, and it's crazy because, like, I don't know these people.
Yeah.
That's not to brag at all or say that there's, some sauce going on here, but it's nice. It's cool to see that there's, a bit of a wide reach and people that are still seeing value in the podcast to this day. I mean, some of our clients at IndieX who have been with us for years, I know still listen to the podcast. And that makes me so happy because I often think that they're probably sick of hearing my voice. So the fact that they still listen and tune in weekly is really, really cool. So that's amazing, and due in no small part to all of you guys that listen. So before we go further into this, thank you. Thank you for listening and for trusting us to bring you cool information and ideas and strategies and the things that are working and letting us share. It's amazing. It's such a cool platform. Thanks for letting Cirque and I be nerds every week.
Yeah.
It's fun. We love it. It gives us an opportunity to talk about things that we don't get to talk about day to day sometimes. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's also the case that, like, if you're listening to this, doing a podcast typically about music marketing, but not very tactical. We very rarely are breaking out screen shares. We're trying to go over broad overviews of things so that you can implement them in whatever, like, specific iteration you've got, depending on your tech stack, depending on where you are in your career. But, like, so you wouldn't expect that we would get clients, like Grammy winning multi-platinum clients for the agency, on the basis of, like, that kind of, weekly talk show. So it's really about, if you take away something from this particular reflection, it's that if you start something today and you keep doing it and it is broadcast to the world and you can express your opinion through it, and you just keep doing it and you keep trying to make it better and you keep trying to get it into more people's hands, it's crazy what can result from that. Things that seem completely disconnected from it can result from that. And that's why we've always kind of harped on recurring content, having a home base of something you do on a regular, whether it's weekly or monthly basis, and just letting the compounding interest of doing that for years just stack up.
Yeah, for sure. That's probably a good jumping off point to talk about a lesson that we've learned and have seen kind of come full circle yet again in 2023. And that has to do with organic social media and its place for distribution and discovery, and how content works on social platforms from an organic perspective.
Yeah. When we started, it was a kind of a weird time in social media where, like, from 2010 to 2015, you could just go post, like, images and quotes on Facebook and rack up 1 million followers on a Facebook page and then monetize it. Like, you could just post stills of Red Sox games and rack up a Red Sox audience of 1 million and then just go sell Red Sox merch. And, it was crazy. It was a crazy time in organic social. So they were just giving out organic reach. You could get in front of lots of people. It was very new. It wasn't as saturated. And then sort of Facebook tamped down that organic reach in favor of the ads platform, but nobody was complaining because the ads platform was so powerful. And if you just took the time to learn Facebook ads, like, the world was your oyster. And then we reached this point of Instagram starting to steal at least mind share, maybe not market share, but certainly like as evidenced by the fact that like people were saying like, oh, Facebook is dead, Instagram is taking over at a time when Instagram had 1/4 the daily active users of Facebook and more young people than Instagram on Facebook. So it took mind share, not market share. But people were constantly looking for that next edge. Snapchat, Vine for a period of time, Instagram, people were looking for where is this going to migrate to next? When in reality, I think all along the next Facebook was Facebook the whole time.
Yeah.
But then like with TikTok coming along, and I remember I was sitting with a former team member at a restaurant and I said, TikTok to 1 billion users. And they made like a bet with me that wouldn't happen by a certain time frame. And I was like, I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. I think TikTok's up next. And sure enough, like TikTok took over the world, at least with its influence. It might not have as many daily active users as Facebook, but it forced Facebook and Instagram's hand to return to that 2010 to 2015 era where organic reach was freely flowing. And you could just go out there and be consistent with posting and rack up a huge audience. And it's interesting to see us return to that time because, a lot of us marketers thought it would never come again, but it's a major opportunity for artists and has been for the last like 2-3 years to leverage that, to use that to your benefit. And so watching that shift in organic social happen and also like advising indies through all that and then coming to this place where it's like, you really need to capitalize on organic social while it's organic social, because if this is just a cyclical thing, it's going to be gone soon.
Yeah, it's true. And, it's funny. That's kind of been the narrative. As soon as it was realized that that was the shift that TikTok was going to take the internet, that became the narrative almost from day one. And you see it in music marketing circles. You saw it from 2020 on. Like, this is a gold rush kind of moment. You saw it in regular digital marketing circles, like take advantage of this. FOMO, FOMO, FOMO. So much to the point where I think people are under the impression that now it's gone, but it's not. The organic social media landscape still is so much more open now compared to what it was, in 2018, 2019. There's still so much you can do. Maybe you have to get a little more creative than what you did when TikTok first came out or when Instagram installs was first being rolled out or something like that, when vertical short form content began its strong arm takeover. But there's a lot of opportunity out there. The real estate and the reach is there for the taking. You just have to tap into it.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at like e-commerce marketers or, any marketer who's trying to leverage organic social, typically what they're trying to do is, first of all, like the first thing you need to do is be successful at getting people's attention in the platform, and they will strip their product from that process. Like, let's not worry about how we're going to sell the product right now. Let's just think, unfettered, untethered. How are we going to get attention? What's a great piece of content? What's a great post? And this is typically in video format now, as opposed to days past, 2010 to 2015. It's now all video. And so with short form video, how can we grab attention, hook people in, get them to watch the whole video? Only once we found that will we then seek a natural bridge, a segue from that moment to our product. And I think it's the same. And I watched this Nick D podcast with Kyle Beats the other day, where he said essentially that. He's like, you think of the content concept before you write the song. And he said, I've always said that. And he's talking about this one kid who did that. He thought of a content concept where he was going to set up a sign that said, if you're having a bad day, sit down, I'll sing you a song. And so he puts that sign out, someone sits down, and then he sings them the song. Well, he wrote the song after he thought of the content.
Dude, Ed and I spoke about this like 2 years ago on the podcast, where we were talking about exactly that. And he was like, when I write my songs, I'm thinking about the videos that I'm going to make. I'm thinking about what it's going to look like when, people are capturing us playing that live. That's the stuff that I'm thinking about visually as I'm writing my songs or before I'm writing my songs. It's so true. And I think back to even like my youngest days writing songs. Like, you know, when you dream of being a rock star and being on stage or making a music video, those are so often like the ways that I wrote music as a kid when I was 11 years old, you know, banging away at a guitar in my bedroom. I was thinking about what would it look like if this was being shown to me on a screen? And it's funny. That concept is so funny to me. I love it so much.
Yeah, it's something that's been done for decades because great direct response copywriters, there's a common theme among them where they seem to free associate headlines. So the first thing that people read, you shouldn't have to come up with that with a constraint of how does this relate to my product? You should come up with it with a constraint of how am I going to write something that gets the most attention? It's going to get the most people to stop and read. I'll worry about transitioning to the product afterwards. But if we don't do that, we don't have a sales letter. Same principle, except it's like, I'm going to think of the content before I worry about transitioning to my music. Because if we don't have content and we don't have attention, we're not going to be able to talk about the music or show it.
This is what separates the lions from the lambs sometime on YouTube. When you see people that have great YouTube video titles and then they connect it to the content, you're blown away and you're like, wow, that was amazing. It got me to click. And now the content is super interesting and it ties back into why I clicked in the first place versus what people would generally refer to as clickbait, which is just like, oh, I clicked on this and it really has nothing to do with what you're talking to me about. I think that as a content creator, that's really what separates, someone who's learning for the first time and someone who is seasoned and has their process for creating something that is not only going to get your attention, but then keep your attention.
Yeah. This isn't new. We're just reminded of it. And with ads, like, it's a little bit different. It just is. Like, if you can implement what we're talking about here in an ad platform or with ads, like, you're going to be more successful than people who can't. But you can afford sometimes to be not as great at grabbing that initial attention with ads. It's more reliant on offer, to be honest with you. But we're in this regime right now where if you can sharpen the skill of figuring out what content idea is a stop in the first 3 seconds and watch it idea, and then go forward from there, like, the world's your oyster. So that's a big shift. That's a big shift from where we were in 2017 when this podcast started. It was kind of always that way on YouTube, but Mr. Beast has certainly brought it to new heights. And now it's that way on pretty much every social platform. And certainly, like, organic social is the main method of discovery. Like, I think it's overtaken Spotify even in terms of music discovery. TikTok, I mean, to a lesser degree, Reels. Like, they're certainly the main method of discovery for music. And that wasn't the case before. You could turn these platforms into discovery platforms using ads and using, like, proprietary features. But I think it's just like the platform itself, the raw, like, download TikTok and open it. Like, that's where you're going to discover music you didn't know about.
Yeah. And discover it in a way, this is, I think, an important point to make. Discover it in a way that creates a fan that has the potential of sticking, as opposed to someone who is just scrolling through a playlist in the gym. It has the opportunity to sooner create active listeners and fans as opposed to passive listeners and fans. And I love the idea of organic social, or we'll just call it social, trumping Spotify as a discovery platform. That's wild. Like, when you put it that way, that's crazy to think about.
Yeah, so that's a big shift and something we've watched happen, and it's very interesting. So it is kind of, we're getting into mid to late gold rush on sort of the renewal of free reach on organic social again. And I imagine there will be a turning in about 2 to 4 years. We're going to pivot probably back to paid social in a big way. And there'll probably be some new advancement in ad tech that makes it so.
This guy can't wait.
Yeah, I can't wait either. I definitely thrive under those conditions. The next one I want to go over, the next big revelation is that, like, when I started this podcast, I had some experience in the music industry. I had dealt with music industry folks. I was certainly well read on the history of the music industry. I knew my history. and I knew where all the bodies were buried. But there was always this sneaking suspicion that, like, well, maybe like the things I've read about the 1980s and 90s are, not the case anymore. Maybe those were different participants in a different music industry, and it's not endemic to the music industry in general. Maybe there's a new wave of executives that do things a little bit differently. Maybe I'm just like a blowhard about this, right? Maybe I'm just like, oh, I read Hitman and I read Appetite for Self-Destruction, and now like I know that the music industry is evil. But there's always sort of that like, oh, don't be so dramatic sort of nagging suspicion. After 300 episodes of this podcast, after dealing with music industry folks, and after watching another 7 years of music industry history unfold, it's worse than you think. it's not it's not like you don't have to worry about like, am I just a blowhard? Because it's like, man, it really is an industry where the parents are sort of out, and like just all sorts of bad behavior and unfair sort of just like mercenary capitalism, like just like a war zone is going on. I think it's especially pernicious because it deals on cultural emotion. It deals on like half of these participants and all of the customers are here for a cultural reason. And the executives in this industry attempt to align with that culture such that they can sneak in under the radar. Like, how are we doing, kids? Like that kind of thing, but they're there for one reason, to exploit. And I've met a few, like a handful of music industry folks who I actually trust and think are there for the right reasons. But I've run into and butted heads with and even done proxy wars with music industry executives who are just fucking out to lunch, man. They're not part of the culture. They're more interested in being liked, not by music fans and cultural tastemakers, but by other executives. They're trying to play the same game, and their heroes are all, playing that game.
My brother uses the term empty suits
Yeah.
to describe people, and it's a really mean word apparently in finance. but that's what I think of. Totally. It's a very interesting landscape to navigate. And it's interesting how now we're finding ourselves in a space where a lot of, what you would refer to as music industry people or execs or music industry folks look more like you and I do. People around our age are kind of permeating the industry more just because of the nature of the job market and the market itself and people going in and out and getting careers and whatnot. But it's interesting how in the same way, a lot of the spirit that we carry into the industry hasn't been brought in with people like us or of the same generation as us. It's a lot of the same. It's like the same bad is being passed on to the next generation. And I only hope that we can do our small part to keep pushing a different narrative, yell the counter narrative as often as we can and be blowhards,
Yeah. So I had that sneaking worry when we first started out that like maybe I'm just like a tinfoil hat, but I don't feel that way anymore. I feel pretty validated in my initial assumptions.
I agree. It's really interesting. I would be curious to talk about this in 300 more episodes and see how things are,
Yeah. Well, okay. So we learned that things done consistently and broadcast over time can yield huge results and outsized influence. We've learned that we seem to be vacillating in 4-year cycles between paid social and organic social has overtaken all music discovery methods as the main music discovery method. We've learned that the music industry is probably as bad as all the jokes about it. And then we've also learned the power of fame when it comes to generating revenue.
Yeah.
What episode was it? I forget which episode we went over it, but we had a campaign at the agency that kind of changed things a little bit where we were marketing a nameless artist, not nameless, but we can't reveal the name in such a public space. But we were working with an artist who had like all of the best neo soul and neo jazz musicians of today on the personnel list, like famous people and badass players. And just like, how the hell did this artist who's never released anything before get all these people? And then in that campaign, we were tasked with, this artist is coming out with his first vinyl, and we need to sell as many of them as we can to recoup his massive investment into this project. And he won't do interviews. He won't do videos. He will not do media. And all we can do is really talk about who's featured on the album. And we ended up selling, I think it was like 250K worth of vinyl in a 3-week period. And it went on to do, I think, like $500,000.
Yeah. This was episode 127, and we'll link back to it in the show notes. This was such a crazy pivotal moment, I think, for the agency in particular, because it was one of those moments where we were like, oh, if there's name recognition, like we can tap cold traffic and we can do it at scale. And we've done it many times since then. We talk about it on the episode too. So go listen to it if you haven't heard it. It's a fun case study. It was also one of the earlier Creative Juice episodes that I was a part of, which was a lot of fun. You can hear me be nervous to be talking on the podcast, I think. I probably sounded a little more shy, but man, talk about being shy. I was so gun shy with that campaign. You know, when we were talking to the gentleman that we worked with on that, I was like, no, Cirque, I don't think we should do it, dude. I don't think it's going to work. So gun shy to even try it. And I'm so glad we did. And I'm so glad that you were like, no, dude, we're going to do it. And it's, even if it doesn't work, who cares? Like, we're going to try it and we're going to learn something from it. And we did. I love that counterbalance that you and I have here, where we interplay off of each other. Either, you know, I'm saying A and you're saying B, or vice versa. And we always learn something, you know?
Yeah, for sure. What it made us realize, and I think it's very important, is that the music industry, you know, it grows a lot of corn, it harvests about 20% of it, maybe less. Meaning, the music industry produces outsized influence, outsized name recognition. And it could reap 5-6 times what it reaps off of that name recognition. Because we've talked about the campaign with experienced music industry veterans a lot in the past. You know, we've gone over similar things. And they're always like shocked. They're always shocked at what we can sell. We have had artists come up through IndiePRO, through this team, and even outside of this team, where the constant refrain from music industry executives is, why do you tour so well? How do you sell so well? It's like digital marketing, baby. But yeah, they're not used to the ability to sell because they don't sell. They're not good at selling or marketing. Like the music industry is terrible at it. And they're shocked that we can just go right to the fans and the customers and be like, do you want this? And they're like, yes, you know, but it showed us that, hey, when we have name recognition, when we have like household name fame, we're actually fishing with dynamite and will usually probably outpace the expectations of who we're working with.
Yeah. One of the coolest things about that specific campaign and all of the subsequent campaigns that we've run for artists that have name recognition since then has been, one, obviously the ability to do that. There's an interesting intersection also of being able to frame an offer in a new way, where even if you're going after what we'll call cold traffic, it's still aware traffic when there's an aware audience, even if they're not fans. But what you can do with music fans then, who may not be specific artist fans, is you can frame an offer in a way that's like, man, I know this artist. I kind of like their music, or I guess I'm into this, but this seems like an irresistible piece of music history that I might want to get. Or I love vinyl and I'm a collector and I want to have this. Or, oh, my favorite artist is a featuring artist on this record, so I absolutely need to get it. All of these kinds of varieties of angles then come into play that you might not have been able to do otherwise if there wasn't that sort of name recognition going on. The awareness level is at a much bigger scale. And I think that that's super cool. And then alongside that, the overflow or the halo effect that then goes on with paid traffic falling into organic traffic, social proof, like search traffic and beyond, and even press and PR, because the virality kind of takes over and then goes into those weird dark corners of the music industry as well. That starts to happen. This halo effect happens where if you can scale audience through paid ads for an offer and sell, everything else just starts to then pulls in like a black hole. It's really great.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that the paid social marketing created the PR for that campaign we're talking about, whereby we start running ads on, a Monday, and by Friday there's a Pitchfork article. And it's like, yeah, the audacity of going out to an audience and asking them to buy something that the only familiarity they have with it is the people who are on the album. It created this buzz. It created this this air of mystery, and people were being bombarded by high spend. And so, yeah, the main takeaway there that we learned is that the music industry does not reap nearly what it sows. And we can take advantage of that. We can get in there and help artists not only make more revenue than they're used to from merch and music, but we can also, in that, give them more assets. So the goal of the agency has always been to, if we have an opportunity to give an artist the email data and it doesn't pass through management or record labels, we do it. If we have an opportunity to leave them with infrastructure, we do it. We try to circumvent the ownership of their assets and data, and hopefully show them what it means and what it can bring in. So yeah, maybe what you learned from that, from what we learned, is not to take your cues of monetization and how to run a business from the music industry at large.
Yeah, dude. Actually, I'm so glad you said that, because that's another lesson that I definitely want to talk about, which if we zoom way, way, way out and go, back in time to 2017, this genesis of this next topic that I want to touch on in this lesson goes right back to you and your brain. It's the idea of not taking cues from the music industry on things like marketing campaigns, but in particular, things like launches, like album launches. We've seen new approaches to album launches in the IndiePRO community for the whole of our life as a business so far. And a lot of that started with the Ultimate album launch and the various iterations that that's seen since you first started testing it and piloting it and taking, a proven digital marketing structure or framework, a sideways sales letter, and turning it into an album launch format that not only works as a marketing campaign, but also creates an asset that an artist or a band can continue to use. And we still see that framework work today. I definitely wanted to talk about that today because I think it's a mind-blowing campaign when done effectively, and it's a lot of work. Obviously, I would argue that it's way more work than what the music industry typically does on album launches. It's really hard. It's hard to pull off well. It's not easy, but man, it creates amazing experiences for fans. It can create a ton of revenue. It creates a big old email list if you do it right. And ultimately, it creates a fan base that wants to stick around with you and feels like they're a part of something. So, I would love to just let you kind of wax poetic for a second about Ultimate album launch and what we've seen since the first time you ran one of those.
Yeah, the IndiePRO concept when it started was literally just let's take all of these things that work for online digital marketing for regular businesses and let's just do them wholesale for artists. Let's change as little about them as we can. Maybe a few modifications here and there to make more sense for the artist to fan relationship. But ultimately, let's not second guess the idea that if it works for this coaching business, if it works for this e-com direct to customer brand, then it should work for a musician. And so from our fan finder method to ultimate album launch to free book shipping and handling, all of these are just borrowed over from the digital marketing industry and just copy and paste that template into an artist and their fans. And when I ran the first ultimate album launch with Nino Bless, it was so exciting and like immersive, but I didn't have nearly the foresight to say, well, actually, this like can be a whole front end indoctrination into a fan base where it's like we've seen with the 502s, like to this day, if you go to the 502s.com, you scroll down, you can take their last album launch experience. And what that does is if you find out about the 502s from a viral TikTok, and then you do a little bit of research and you're like ready to become a part of that fan base and you sign up for that album launch, by the end of it, you might not only be a customer, but you have like spent time with Ed and the gang. You've spent time like hearing them talk to you through emails and getting behind the scenes. And so really you're forming this bond with the band. And now they don't have to like run one-off campaigns or constantly adjust like an introduction email series. It's just like, hey, you're a fan, you want to go deeper, take this. And now when you get spat out the other side of that, you're a lifelong 502s fan. Like you're never going to forget that experience. So what it's morphed into is this like thing. It's like a rite of passage for indies in the community where it's like, you know, hopefully you get to a point where it makes sense to make an album and release it. And it's not like suicide to do so, which it can be at the beginning of your career. But also hopefully like it serves as a major piece of infrastructure in your business and brand where you know, it leaves behind this portal that if you send relatively new listeners through it, they come out the other end lifelong fans. And so, yeah, it's been very interesting. And it's also interesting to reflect on like, what's going to be the next batch of digital marketing concepts that build on direct marketing from decades past that we can then transpose into the music industry? Because there's going to be more.
Yeah, I'm always thinking about that kind of stuff. Actually, I was having a conversation with one of our agency clients today about a specific launch that it's not really a launch, but a specific marketing initiative that we're going to be doing around their membership in January. And my brain doesn't look to the music industry for, oh, how can we do this well? It looks to everything that I know about digital marketing and everything that I learn and consume both this year and this week and next month and over the last 10 years of my life. And there's a lot that you can pull if you're willing to take chances and look at frameworks outside of the music industry. Maybe that's a nice takeaway here and a lesson to be learned is that there's a lot more you can learn from other types of businesses than you can necessarily just by looking at the microcosm of the music business.
Well, also it's like, you know, if you are out there, you're listening to this, you're an aspiring musician, you don't have a music career yet. Really what you're doing is like all the same things work. And you're going to deal with all the same challenges. You're trading off the ability to make revenue in the short term, which you probably won't do as an artist. You'll probably lose money on your music career for the first year or two. You are trading that off for just a much more fun and fulfilling career in general. It's going to be a lot more fun than like year 7 of being an artist. If you're on an upwards trajectory, will be a lot more fun than year 7 of like a coaching business. If you're on an upwards trajectory or a D2C brand, so much so that you'll probably have exited the D2C brand by the time you get to 7 years. So yeah, it's just like know what your challenge is. You're not different from any other business, and your set of assumptions, your priors, your first principles should come below the music industry. They should be business, not the music industry. So, you know, anything that is very specific to the music industry is not a first principle for you. What I mean is it's a second order derivative. It's a big assumption. And if you can let go of those assumptions and work up from first principles by learning about business and seeing if that applies, you'll often realize that these second order assumptions that the music industry takes are like broadly incorrect or not helpful, you know?
They don't really hold water, and the instances where they work well may not work for you, likely won't work for you.
Okay, so we've gone over a set of things that we've sort of learned and matured into as we've gone over these 300 episodes. What else do we got?
This is a short one for me, but I'll say something that broke my brain was the first few times that I watched some of our IndieX clients sell something expensive to their fans.
What's expensive?
I'm trying to think of the first times where I was like astounded by it, but anything over $400 or $500 was where I was starting to have my brain be like, oh, snap, like this is cool. And into the thousands and even up to $10,000 in, membership, Patreon or otherwise tiers, seeing that reality actually come to fruition was a brain breaker for me. And it was like, oh, if they can do this, it's just a really valuable offer and their fans want it. And these were not, in a number of cases, these were not artists with massive fan bases. They were just really passionate fans that were made a really cool offer. And it led me to a place of conviction in knowing that if you're an artist and you want to stop selling things that are, or stop only selling things that are sub $100, you can certainly do so. And you should.
Yeah, we had an artist in the IndiePRO group the other day who sells custom songs at $250 a pop. But yeah, like that's a perfect example and a good backwards segue into what I was saying is that like a second order assumption of the music industry is that your products fit within this narrow band. But the first order assumption of business, like a primary business lesson, is that like if you sell something for $20 and you have 10,000 customers, you should have something for $4,000 because the 80-20 principle applies. There will be someone in your audience who wants that thing. If you took the music industry, like prescribed methods of revenue generation, they're all business to business. They're all some business paying you a check in the form of royalties or a license or a guarantee. And their hope is that they or someone that they contract with is going to go out there and deal with the whole business to customer fiasco. But not only should you do it, but if you do it, you get to dictate, what am I selling? What's the pricing? You can arbitrarily raise and lower prices. You can arbitrarily add and subtract value or work. And when you have the freedom to experiment like that, you'll often find that these second order assumptions are wrong. That you can sell house shows for over $1,000 like Jordan did on the back end of a great video ad. You can sell $10,000 membership for an annual. It was insane. So yeah, it's a huge missed opportunity that when you come out as an artist, you think Spotify check, you think DistroKid check, you think performance guarantee for a show. You don't think 20,000 tickets over a tour. You don't think, one single digital membership 10K. Like that's purely outside the realm of what you think is possible coming into the music industry as an observer and then participant. So that's why it's important to build from first principles in this industry. Is you should really ignore the traditional assumptions of the music industry because high ticket, just like it works for many businesses who don't assume that they can do it, it works for musicians as well.
Yeah, dude. It's so exciting when you start to accept that that could be something that would work for you. And if there's any lesson or encouragement that I can make around this topic on this episode, and now's such a good time to do it as we get into the December deep work month, is like, accept that that's possible for you. Oh man, I'm about to go mindset coach. Accept that that's possible for you and start thinking about what offers you can make.
Yeah.
And man, even if one person takes it, wouldn't that be sick?
Yeah. Yeah. And it costs you nothing except the time to set it up.
Yeah.
And that's a broader concept, is that like it costs you nothing to make an offer, even in terms of relational equity. People can just say no. That's the worst you're going to get.
Yeah.
But as you make more offers, you'll get more yeses.
Yeah.
So yeah, like having this like wanton abandon and this for like, reputational risk, downside risk. So if you're not making a huge upfront investment, what's the harm in making an offer? So yeah, there really is there's no ceiling to what you can do for money as a musician and what your fans will want to pay you for. And you really don't know, like, most musicians are broke. So by that relational effect, we assume that all of our fans are broke. Some of them spend 10K in an afternoon just for kicks, just having a laugh. You know, they're out there and they have a very different relationship with money than you might. And so if you don't have something that they would actually feel enticed to buy, you know, something they wouldn't scoff at because it's so low, like you're probably not going to extract like or get the value that you provide them back.
That's a big one. That's a big lesson. I love that one.
Huge.
The final one that I had to bring to the show today, and I don't want to get too in the weeds or argumentative about this, but you and I, when IndiePRO was in its earliest days, were maybe not green digital marketers, but young, right? And I think at that point in my life, I was in a place where I believed in email marketing as like a direct method of communication and making offers to people and stuff like that. But there was always a seed in my mind that was like, oh, eventually something's going to usurp email marketing and it's probably going to be soon. And especially when it came to music, it still is fascinating to me how well email marketing works and probably will continue to work to this day and beyond. And I bring that up on this episode in particular because I think it's worth continuing to talk about and say, because there's so much disbelief in it, especially in music, where like every other business in the world thrives on getting leads for their business. And in most corners of the music industry, we don't even think about touching it. And it's so important, you know?
Yeah, it's that Drake meme where like the music industry is like email marketing and then they're like text marketing. Now that I can get behind. And it's like, dude, or like people say ridiculous things like young people don't even use email.
I love that
Dude.
one. I love that one.
Yeah.
They come with jokes, dude. They come with jokes. They're comedians.
Yeah. It's absolutely nuts that people think that. But yeah, like the market leader is the market leader. And really it makes sense because all marketing and advertising was based off of the written word and sales letters and direct mail. And so it would make sense that all the best knowledge and the best infrastructure would come up through the digitized version of that, which is email. Furthermore, like email is the universal identifier of the entire internet. Like we may come up with something better someday, but it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah.
And so it's just the goated channel. It's so goated and people fade it constantly, but I don't know why. There's a great image of this stock trader who's kind of like it's a meme and he's like leaning over his desk, looking at the camera, and behind him is a sign that says winners average winners, meaning the winning strategy in stock trading is to average in to whatever the winning stock is. Like if it's up, buy it. Right.
Right.
And it's kind of the same principle applies. Like the market leader is the market leader. Like winners average winners. Like take the 42x you get off email marketing investment and roll it forward, you know?
Yeah.
And if you're not in, like it's not too late. It's still the market leader. So yeah.
It's funny when email gets faded, when it's just like, you haven't even really tried it. Maybe if you try it, you'll like it. It's like eating your veggies, you know?
Yeah, it's wild. And like I know like I have friends who are like million plus monthly listener, new social music industry heads, right? Complete opposite world of me in this industry. And I've tried to get them into like email lists, merch, direct product offers, and they just can't get a hold of it. But when they're looking to sell tickets, it's like organic social, a scramble to maybe collect some, you know, some emails. And it's like, dude, if you started collecting email addresses 4 years ago, you'd be sold out by now.
It's funny, on the spectrum of artists that I've spoken to over the years now, you find people who want nothing to do with it or don't know anything about it. You find people who love it and believe in it and have seen what you can do. And then you have this middle person who's like, yeah, I use it for live shows and it works well for that. That's about as far as it goes. It's like the gateway drug. Tour marketing and email marketing is like the gateway drug marriage.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating. But yeah, no, for sure. Like I kind of had that bent when we started. It was like, oh, email marketing's not going anywhere, because people had already started this like psychological war against it, like trying to fade it. So I was already kind of on that train, but like it's remarkable how it's held up through so many innovations. SMS marketing really rose to prominence in the time that we've been a business. Messenger marketing was huge for a little while.
Yep. Marketers ruined that one.
Marketers ruined it.
Thanks.
Yep. Even people were saying things like Dispatch. Is that what it is? The on-site chat widgets were a better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like so many different iterations of how to communicate with customers. And it's like, just send them a fucking email. Dude.
Yeah. Funny.
It's hilarious. Well, yeah, my hope is that we have another 300 episodes in the tank. And I hope that we get to learn a lot more as we go. And I hope we continue to get to impact people. You know, like I talk to people. It always shocks me when someone tells me about the reach that we have or how we've impacted someone's life or career. Because I don't walk around thinking that. I walk around thinking like, we're just doing the podcast, another podcast episode. It's like, you know, it's like milking the cows, right?
Yeah.
You never think this glass of milk is going to save somebody.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I sincerely hope that we get to keep doing this forever. And I sincerely hope that it's helpful for y'all.
My favorite thing about Creative Juice is just like coming together every week and looking at the list of cool things that we might want to talk about. Just being like, all right, yeah, this sounds cool. Like, let's talk about this one. Or building that list over time and being like, these are the things that we would just enjoy talking about, and hopefully somebody gets something neat out of it. And so, if nothing more, I agree. I hope that we've got another 300 in us. I feel like we do. Hopefully we have 300 more neat things to tell you guys about. And I look forward to it every day.
Hell yeah. Thanks so much for 300 episodes, Indies.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. We love you. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time on Creative Juice. Peace out. Can y'all really feel us? East Coast, feel us, West Coast,